Thank you, Chairperson. Ambassador Paliakara, distinguished participants, faculty members of the KDU, and ladies and gentlemen. It's my pleasure to be in this reputed institute. Though I've been visiting Sri Lanka from 2005, but this is the first time I'm coming to KDU. The topic which is given to me is the dynamics in the Korean Peninsula and its implication for the global security. Being a last speaker, I will not take much time. I'll try to be brief as much as possible. So what I intend to do is, first to give a sense of what is the dynamics in the Korean Peninsula at present, and a bit about the bird's view about the North Korea. And then I will briefly talk about the growing nuclear capabilities of the North Korea, and is the latest missile launched by North Korea, it's the end game for them, or still they have any plans, and what is the regional implication and options available? If you see the Korean Peninsula, the war came to end in 1953 itself through the agreement, but it's not a peace treaty. It was the Amsterdam agreement, which in order to end the agreement, so that itself is a problematic in my view, because you have agreed to end the war, but was there a reconciliation? Was there an effort to build trust and confidence among the players? That was not there. So the suspicion and mutual trust prevailed continuously from early 1950s. And the South Korea, with its economic advantage, has gone up. But however, North Korea, which is having a pressure to bridge the gap, what it did is not to build the widening disparity, went in a conventional way and also depend on developing the nuclear the capabilities in order to match South Korea and its ally, the US. So as a result, the defense expenditure of both the North Korea and South Korea has gone up significantly, and the whole peninsula is now under precarious and uncertain situation. And some of the people are saying that it's a next potential nuclear flashpoint. Once it was told as South Asia, but now they're saying about North Korea. It keeps changing, but the thing is, the reality is that there's always a possibility of war between the North and South, and then given the power equation in the region, the other allies can join. And interestingly, which everyone agrees and knows about it, that South Korea heavily relies on the United States for its protection based on the treaty they have, whereas the North Korea depends on the China. This is the power equation. One side we have the US and its allies, the other side China's most trusted partners. And there are other places like Russia, India, Vietnam, others in the Asia Pacific who too have some linkage with the countries. So this is the power equation right now which is emerging in this peninsula. And if you see the North Korea, it's been ruled by a single family from 1948 onwards. Started with the Kim Song-won, and then now we have the King Song-on, and the whole family controls it. And the interesting thing is sandwiched between the China and South Korea, and mostly rely on China for its economic needs as well as for the development. This is the bird's eye view of the missiles program which the North Korea had, and from 1998 onwards to the recent last Friday, which they had the second test of the Osong, or what is called Hanchang or Chongsong 14, which is claimed to be the intercontinental range ballistic missile. So this actually threatens and then scale up the threat of war in the peninsula. And not only that, interestingly, North Korea also what it's doing is trying to improve its capability simultaneously in space, nuclear and conventional, which they believe that it's very important to not only deter US, but also in a position to attack US if there's a need. This is the two pictures of the missile program which they had, and now with the recent one, they're claiming the studies, most of the studies, even our own studies claims that they can reach 6,000 kilometers range, and they can be targeting Alaska very easily. And this is the general map available about the weapons and then how far they can reach it. This is another one with the recent one. If you see, interestingly, from 2013 to 2017, there was an unprecedented pace of the missile testing by the North Korea, and which includes the longer range missiles, sea launches, and then orbiting of satellites. So is it the end game? What they want is they achieve. But in my view, that Though they have a capability, they have demonstrated, but they may not stop it because they may go further to have a capability in order to reach the continental America. Till that, I believe, because which is about, if you take Alaska, will be about roughly 10,000 kilometers. So I believe that they may still further go, and since there is no check, even sanction or US sanction has not worked, so they definitely they may go further. These are the 5 nuclear tests that North Korea has conducted from 2006, and interestingly, in January 2016, last year, they have tested hydrogen bomb. These are our study report, which shows that the fissile material is plutonium, and then the various the ales have been given here. These are the nuclear sites. Most of the sites were in the Pyongyang nuclear, the site within the northern part, but the recent one on Friday, the news report says that it is close to China border, and they have unexpectedly, which was not predicted, they have did in the nighttime the test. So it is a new unseen phenomena in the US, the North Korean nuclear program. This is a nuclear facility which North Korea has, which is available in the open domain. So what is interesting and important point to note is that today the North Korea has space, nuclear, and the conventional war capability, which is linked, and which can be used for civilian purpose as well as for the military purpose, and which can be the national power, pride, as well as to support the survival of the regime too. So what is the objective of the North Korea while doing it? So in my view, understanding is a dual objective. One is that definitely because of the power equation, because of the equation between the US and the North Korea and the allies in the Korean Peninsula, they not only want to deter, but also was trying to develop their capability in order to target the mainland US, and which they believe it gives a solid protection for them. The second objective is that it's also linked to the survival of the regime, which is ruling the North Korea from 1948 onwards. And finally, the literature is available, and then the interaction with the people who served there shows that there is also clear objective of the North Korea that if in future there is a unification of South Korea and North Korea, it should be under their own terms, not under the terms of South Korea. So that's another objective it seems to be. And the implication of this expansion of North Korea's nuclear capability is a serious threat to global threat, because not only it's going to affect the Korean Peninsula, but also the other countries, as it involves the immediate neighbor China, Russia, and then the US. And if you see today, the North Korea already has unstable or not a good relation with its neighbors. And given this uneasy the equation in the power dynamics in Peninsula, that most of the artilleries in South Korea are now pointed towards the North Korea, pointed towards South Korea, and then South Korea has requested for the American protection, that anti-ballistic missile protection, and which shows that the region is under almost to the brink, and it also forces the South Korea to think about developing their own the substantial conventional military forces, including the nuclear capability. And if if South Korea goes nuclear, it will force Japan. And Japan too also follow it. So 4 powers in the region will have nuclear power, which is not desirable, not welcome by anyone. And it's also the nuclear power, the going South Korea and Japan nuclear also may not be liked by China and then by the Russian. So it is going to be difficult to sense that how the players are going to respond to this situation. And interestingly, if you see in 1950s, the Soviet Union's the growing nuclear capability forced the Britain and France to go nuclear. So the similar situation is developing in the Korean Peninsula. So to see the US in particular, the US administration, currently the President Donald Trump, has made the North Korea as a priority issue for him. But one, he tried to impose the economic sanction, which has not worked very well so far, but also it depends on China to resolve the crisis. And this is the complicating issue, because he knows that the sanctions have not been effective, including the UN sanction, because the UN food aid is very much helping the North Korea to survive. And despite it, he is trying to depend on China. And if you see the China particular, China is being giving regular statement. They also have adopted series of sanctions, but understandably, it seems to be China has not really cared about it. because they also believe that North Korea going nuclear way will finally help US and North Korea come into agreement and then to settle the issues. And it also gives a legitimacy to the North Korea. So in my understanding, clearly China doesn't want North Korea to disappear. It needs to be there for them, as well as in order to also have a unification under the North Korea rather than on the South Korea. But from the Chinese side, they have made a proposal from March 8 this year, and they said that temporarily let the US and South Korea halt the large-scale military exercise, whereas the North Korea can freeze it. And immediately the response from the North Korea, which is the North Korean ambassador to India, has responded in June 21 saying that they are willing to embrace this idea if the US and South Korea is going to do it. So the big question is, everyone says North Korea is the rogue in the today's world, and they can do whatever they want. If that is the thing, if they provoke a war, is the powers like China, US trying to support their allies or partners, if really whether they're interested to war, fight each other, given the understanding that they have economic linkage and then they know that there is what is the problem of going war. So clearly, it becomes far more danger than earlier period to have for nuclear power in the future, and then the war between the allies of the superpowers, which can draw which can draw them also in near future. So what is the policy options available? One, if you are not able to stop the North Korea, US should definitely see a mechanism to work collectively with the South Korea, China, Russia if needed, in order to neutralize the North Korean nuclear program. And since the sanctions are not working much, US can think about downplaying it and try to have more cooperation, because the important point to understand why North Korea is going nuclear is that there is an insecurity. There is a feeling that they are under tremendous threat from the US. So unless you address the core issue, I believe that North Korea will not come to the table to discuss. So I think the US needs to take a more responsibility instead of depending on China to do something which has their own linkage. So US need to address it, and it can bring the more powers to it. As a collective action, they can do it. And the first thing is they can downpay the sanction, and second is they can normalize the diplomacy relationship with the North Korea, which can give a sense of security and then which can bring North Korea to the table. Thank you. If there's anything, I will try to take in the question and answer session.